Our front end looks nice. We have created a nice component, nice view. But let's see that we still don't have any functionality. So let's do a hello world in order to see what happens once I post it to the backend. So you can see 2 requests are done. The first one is just a post request to my backend, to the Quarks URL, sorry, with a payload of the message. Oh, I mistyped it. Anyway, and then after it directly there's a get request to get all the quarks. So this is inertia functionality by itself. So you see that there's nothing. We don't return anything. We don't save anything. Let's do it now. First of all, what we're going to do, we're going to go and see where we receive and what we receive in the backend. So the method that it's called is the store method. So let's die and dump directly the request all. So all what we send will be die and dumped. A very handy and nice feature about inertia is that when you die and dump anything, well, actually it's not only when you die and dump, it's when the response is not recognized by inertia. So you can see that here what we get is a 500 internal error, okay, because it's a die and dump. So what we really do is we stop the execution. When inertia does not recognize the status code, it just outputs anything into a model, so that you can see it like we are doing now. So this is really nice in order to see the behavior of the backend, for example. Okay, so we know that we are receiving this on the backend. Great. So what we could do actually, we could just here, just to let's go step by step. So we could use the model and create. We could actually create a new quak out of the request. Let's remove this. I believe the model. Okay, great. If we do this, it's gonna fail for sure. Let's test it out anyway. So let's do it like this. I'm gonna press, and you see in this case it's just a real error because we first of all we didn't set up the fillable property. So by default Laravel just does not allow the method segment like we did, so we cannot just pass in an array without allowing certain fields, and that's why it fails. So let's first fix that and then we move further. Therefore, we just go into the model itself and we say, okay, the fillable property, it needs to be an array. Which fields are we gonna allow? So the message. And now if we go back and try it again, let's just clean everything up, close the model, and quack. Okay, now another error comes up, so that that feels like we already fixed it. Okay, great. The error that we have now is that we have no table quaks. So we created our database in the beginning, but we did not migrate our migration for the quaks. So let's do this. But before we migrate it, what we need to do is we need to change our migration. So let's go back to our database folder, migrations, and the create quak stable. If you remember, we only have the ID and the timestamps. So let's now create the fields that we will need for our quaks. Basically, we need a string That's our message. By default, it's a length of 255. We could change it, but let's keep it for now. Okay, and we also want that every quak is attached to a user. So therefore, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give it a foreign key, foreign ID. Let's call it user ID. It's also constrained. And let's give it a cascade on delete. So if the user is deleted, all their quaks are also deleted. And that's it. It's that easy. Now we can go to our terminal and migrate this. Okay, let me just open a new tab. Go into the quak and just PHP artisan migrate. This is just gonna run the migrations that were not run yet. So that's very handy as well. So that every time I do a PHP artisan migrate, it only runs those that were not migrated yet. If we do it again, you will see nothing to migrate because we just migrated this. This is saved in the database. Let's open the database to see it. So therefore, I'm gonna use table plus. And let's just create a new connection to a SQLite server. There it is. Okay, and let's say the name is quak. Okay, status color green because we are on local. Okay, and the path. Just let's go to the path and into my code folder quak database SQLite. Open it. Let's test it. It's green, perfect. Now we can let's save it and we can connect. And here we go. Here's our database. This is everything that Laravel migrated back in the beginning, and this is our actual table. You can see here with our structure. We can see the structure in here, our ID, user ID, messages, created that, updated that. And here we have all the other tables that we had created. And in the migrations table, you can see, if we go back to the data, you can see those are the migrations that are migrated already. Every time I do a new PHP artisan migrate, the batch is updated. So the next time I migrate a new one, it's the 3. So that it also holds the order in which it was migrated. Let's clean this up. Okay, now if we go back to our code and we go back to our controller, if we do this, actually, it should actually save it. Let's test it out. Go to our page. Let's clean this up and see if now works. Okay, now we have another error. This is a total different error. The problem here is that we gave or we set up a field for a relationship to the users table, and we are not passing in any user. So that's why it's giving us this error. Actually, we can solve it very easy by, let's go back to our code, by just providing, for example, let's say instead of request all, what we want in here is we say the message is going to be message. And now we could also provide a user ID. And if we now say request user ID, request user ID, I believe. Okay, great. This should actually do the trick. And insert also the user ID into the database. So therefore we will not have that problem. Before we actually test this out, we need to go back to our model and also add a fillable property for the user ID. Otherwise, it will just strip that out. So the fillable, what it does, it only passes to the model the fields that are listed in here. So if we don't list it in here, it will just strip this out. Okay, going back in here, let's clean this a little bit up. So it looks a little bit nicer. Perfect. Now, if we go back to our browser and we test it, let's clean everything up and we test it. Awesome. You see that we just created a new message. It does not give us any error. And now let's have a look in our database. Let's open Table Plus again. Just 1 second. I'm going to bring Table Plus into this screen so that you can see it. And if we now go to Quaks, there it is. Great. Let's clean this up and test it again. So, hi there. Quak. And if we now go into our Table Plus, reload, there is our message. Okay, now that we know that it works, let's clean this up a little bit and put also some validation up front so that if we don't provide a message, for example, it just fails. First of all, what we're going to do is instead of using the model directly here, instead of using the model, what we're going to use is the user that is making the request and attach it directly to him. So in order to do that, we can just use the request user. So this is actually the user that's making the request. Okay. And what we're going to do, we are going to use our quaks, sorry. And then we're going to create that quak, basically passing in the message, only the message. Okay. So something like that. So that's the difference. Here we're directly accessing the model and saying, okay, create a new quak with this message for this user. And here what we're going to saying is, okay, here we have the user that's making the request, get the relation to his quaks and create a new one. What's the difference? The difference is here that I could actually just say true, so this could be misleading, and here we don't have that problem. Okay, so let's remove this and stick to this one, and this we can also clean up. I just wanted to go step by step. The first thing that we need to do actually is in the user itself, let's create a relationship to the quak or to the quaks. Therefore, we just open the user model, and here at the very bottom we are just gonna create a public function quaks. Okay, this is the name of the model in plural because it will be a one-to-many relationship. So one user can have many quaks. That's very easy. So just return this has many relation, and we just attach the quak model, not the quak controller, but the quak model class. Perfect. Let's also add some nice comments in there. And actually, if we now go back to our controller and we test this out, it should work without any problem. Okay, second quak in my life, for example. Let's go to our database and verify that everything is there. Table plus. And there it is. Great. It works exactly the same way. Let's build now the validation on top. So we are just going to use the Laravel built-in validator, what is very nice. So the request object itself has a validation. So we can just say validated. We go in here. We use the request and we want just to validate with these rules that I'm gonna pass in. So for the message, what do we want? We want to be required. We also want that it's a string and that it has a max character of 255. What is our the length for our database field. And now we need to switch this for the validated data. So basically what we can do is just remove the array, the entire array, and say, okay, validated. If we look into the validate method directly, we can see that it will just return an array of all the validated data. So in this case, it's just, just the message itself. Okay, and once we have also created the quak, because it's only one, we're just gonna return a redirect. We're gonna return a redirect route back to the quak index. Quak index. I don't remember. Is it quak index? Let's have a look. I don't remember the exact name. How can we verify it? Very easy. PHP artisan. Route list. And here we have also the name. It's quaks index. Quaks index. Perfect. So then let's say it's quaks index. And now we also need to change the response because otherwise it's complaining. Yep. Change return type from response to redirect response. Yeah, let's add it there. And this is not route, it's route. For me, it's very important to have a very nice IDE that shows all this in order to avoid as many errors as possible. Okay, now that we have the validation in place, let's test this again. Go back in here. Let's validate a simple quak. Press enter. Does it work? Is it saved? Yeah, there it is. What happens if we don't pass any message? So if we just press, let me clean this up. If we just press the button, okay, it returns, you can see it returns a 302, not found. The message field is required. That's great. And this is normally what Laravel does, it returns a 422, what is validation error. But in this case, you can see that we get a 302. This is how inertia works. So the 422 is just an error that they don't catch, but underlying the framework itself, it's just giving you that error message. And if you remember, in our front end, if we go back to our index.vue here, what we have said is, okay, if the form itself, because this object here, or this function, when we call the post, and it has any errors, it will just set it into the errors array in here. That's why we see the message. So it's really nice. You see, it's very fast, very easy to use, and there it is. The message field is required. It says, okay, what happens if we put a very long text? Because remember, it needs to be a string, and it also needs to have a max amount of characters of 255. So let's just go to a lorem ipsum page and grab, I don't know, a lot of text. Let's say 5 paragraphs, for example. Yep, that should be enough. If I paste it in here, you see there's a lot of text. Let me make this bigger. Yeah, great. And let's try it. And now the error message says the message must not be greater than 255 characters. Okay, that is great. Let me just clean up and try this one. It's still greater. Let me go until here and see. Yeah, there is. So we just saved a new one, I believe. And there we have it. So now we are able to create a new quak and to post it and save it. By the way, I just saw an error. Just give me a moment. It says quark. It's not quark, it's quak. Quark is something else. Okay, now I can go back and let's recap. We are able to create new posts, new messages in our database and attach it to the user who's creating it. In the next video, we're gonna see how to list or see all the quaks that we posted.